Thank you very much, Tekla. My name is Etta Wardaav. I am the Associate Executive Director of OCASI. First of all, I would like to welcome all participants to this event, Building Accessible Services for Immigrants and Refugees with Disabilities. Thanks for squeezing the time to join us today. The annual observance of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities on December 3rd was proclaimed in 1992 by the United Nations General Assembly resolution. The observance of the day aims to promote an understanding of disability issues and mobilize support for the dignity, rights, and well-being of persons with disabilities. Happy International Day of Persons with Disabilities, even though we are on the 6th. I start with the land acknowledgement. To recognize the land is an expression of gratitude and appreciation to those whose territory we reside on, and a way of honoring the indigenous people who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. It is important to understand the long-standing history that has brought us to reside on this land and to seek to understand our place within that history. So I wish to acknowledge this land on which we are meeting today. It has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit for thousands of years. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many indigenous people from across Turtle Island. And we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live on this island. And now, just a little bit about OCASI. What is OCASI? The Ontario Council of Agencies Serving Immigrants. OCASI was formed in 1978 to act as a collective voice for immigrant serving agencies and to coordinate responses to shared needs and concerns. OCASI is a registered charity governed by a volunteer board of directors, and it has more than 240 community-based organizations in the province of Ontario. OCASI's mission is to champion equity and human rights for immigrants and refugees through advocacy, collective action, collaborative planning, research, capacity building, and information and knowledge transfer. OCASI is committed to enhancing the capacity of settlement service workers and assist in their efforts to develop and deliver innovative and effective services to newcomers. One of the many initiatives of OCASI is the Accessibility Initiative. The initiative is a national bilingual project that aims to enhance the knowledge and skill of settlement sector professionals so that they are better equipped to serve newcomers with visible and invisible disabilities. This initiative has created a range of online professional development, activities, tools, and resources to assist organizations serving newcomers in creating accessible and inclusive space for all newcomers. And today, actually, we are going to launch one of the tools. Today, we have an exciting program lined up for you today. At this point, my role is to introduce the moderator and pass the microphone to her. So I am going to introduce Dr. Anna Victoria Wong. Dr. Wong is the Executive Director of Community Family Services of Ontario, which provide East Asian Ontarians with mental health, settlement, disabilities, and special needs services. Dr. Wong is a journalist and a doctor in speech language pathology by training and health executive and community advocate by profession. She spent years in communication in corporate, public, academic, social service sector. Dr. Wong's doctoral research focused on access and equity to health services for population with invisible communication disability. Dr. Wong is also an ally in accessibility for OCASI's accessibility initiative. Allies in accessibility means that Dr. Wong is a volunteer champion that supports the project doing various activities, such as today being the moderator, promoting the initiative and raising awareness, bringing service providers together for greater resource sharing and collaboration. She is also the chair of Ontario Chinese Health Coalition. The coalition is known for serving socio-politically oppressed Hong Kongers, I think these people from Hong Kong, through IRCC's Hong Kong Pathway. And now, Dr. An Yang, I give you the mic. Thank you.
Thank you, Etta. I believe Anna is not here yet.
Oh, she's not? No, she's here, but we can't hear her. Oh. Mm. Okay, Tekla, are you following up?
Hi, Anna, you can proceed with the moderation session.
We have today, where we have service providers and lived experience testimonials right here today. My questions would actually be directed to both ends, issues identified by service providers or issues identified by lived experience individuals, and and also complement with the insights at the front line by service providers to see whether there is anything patterns and gaps and challenges that we can identify for policymakers or for our sector to actually bring forward to funders at this stage. So this is why we are here today. So I would like to introduce the panelists if that has not been done yet. I can't see your faces, so I suppose that hasn't been done. Okay, so say it again.
No, that has not been done.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to introduce Yomi. Yomi, do you have your camera and speaker ready to introduce yourself for a few minutes?
Yeah, I do. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity and privilege. My name is Adeleke Ogumbayo. I love to go by Yomi, so people call me Yomi. So my name is Yomi Ogumbayo. I am a newcomer to Canada, an immigrant with disability, visually impaired. I have a degree bachelor in political science. And right now here in Canada, I practice as a social service worker, immigrants and refugee. I currently work with Loblaws as a customer service representative. And also I am an advocate and ambassador for CNIB, Canadian National Institute for the Blind.
Very nice to have you, Yomi. Do you want to introduce yourself in French or?
In French?
Or are we
do,
having it?
Yeah, we do have interpreters.
Okay, good. Let's keep going. And the next one I would like to introduce is Marie. Marie came from Burundi in 2019 with her family and daughter, Chuchu, who has autism. Marie, do you want to, before you generously try to testify for us today, do you have anything to introduce yourself with? I guess not. That's okay. So Marie has generously agreed to testify today on her journey to Canada and New Brunswick as a parent with a child with a disability. And that strikes a heartstring with me as well, because in my private practice, I do work a lot with disabilities, children with autism, you know, being a doctor in speech language pathology, and a lot of newcomers racialized in those families in poverty, I understand do not have access to services for autism and other learning and developmental disorders too, basically because of their status in Canada. So that's something very valuable that we can hear from Marie about. The next one is Michael Farr. If Michael is here to introduce himself, if not, I can do that.
Hi, yeah, I'm Michael Farr. I'm the program coordinator over at Employabilities. And a part of my position here at Employabilities is as a program coordinator for a program that is funded by IRCC, so Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. And in the program, which is called Employabilities for Newcomers, we support newcomers who are permanent residents, refugees, and protected persons who self-disclose to some type of permanent condition or disability. And in this pre-employment training, we go over what it is to have a disability in Canada, recognizing how common it is in Canada, what their rights are, as well as talking about accommodations for employment and employment preparedness, and then try to connect them to agencies and support them in their employment journey. So thank you very much, Anna.
Thank you, Michael. The next one I would like to introduce is Dr. Sukena Dada. Dr. Dada has been working in the areas of children's health and disability rights for over 15 years. Sukena focuses on improving health disparities among racialized communities and persons with disabilities. She's a pediatric occupational therapist and is the founder and executive director of Smile Canada Support Services, a Canadian charity supporting racialized children and youth with disabilities and their families. Dr. Dada holds a PhD in critical disability studies from the School of Health Policy and Management from York University, with a research focused on displacement and disablement. If Dr. Dada is here to say hi.
Thank you everyone for having me, and thank you, Anna, for that kind introduction.
Thank you. So we can move on to the panel discussion right now, themed community voices, voix de la communauté. So well, let's start there by asking, maybe tapping into the brains of our lived experience individuals here. Start with something just easy to understand, as in, you know, daily needs, or what we call the Maslow's hierarchy, the lower types of physiological needs, right? Do we have Yomi, Marie, ready to talk to us about your lived experience in relation to disability and your settlement in terms of employment and in terms of a child with disability, please? Maybe we'll start with Yomi first with employment.
Yeah. Thank you for this wonderful privilege. Once again, my name is Yomi. I am a racialized immigrant with disabilities. I'm visually impaired. When I came new to Canada, actually, I was in a state of dilemma. I see myself in a state of vulnerabilities. Though I realized that there is different employment agency around, and based on my experience as a profession in social work back home, I try to identify with different employment agency when I came new to Canada, developing my resume in line with the Canadian standard of resume. And some of my challenges is that the job descriptions. I understand there is transferable skills. I try much as possible to align my transferable skill in Canadian concept, but sometimes I find it difficult due to the job descriptions as a newcomer to Canada with disabilities, there is a couple of contemporary challenges people with disability are facing in terms of disclosures. I was privileged to gain a lot of interview, but I did not disclose my disabilities. Getting to the point of interview, when the interviewer or the HR saw me, it became a different ballgame. My resume was so good, so nice, so attractive to gain attention for interview. But getting there, oh, you're visually impaired. Well, the story changed. Though they won't tell me, but due to the body language, due to my own observation, they will never get back to me after the interview. But the employment agency, which I'm working with, there is a barrier. As an immigrant with disabilities, a couple of them does not really work with protected person or a refugee claimant. They strictly work with permanent residence clients. So those are some of my challenges, other clauses, because when I try to identify myself with employment agency, when they realize you're a refugee or you're asylum claimer, some will say, oh, we can't work with you. We only work with clients with permanent residence. So this gets me stuck for some employment agency that serve people with disability to work with me. I also identify with, as a visually impaired person, I identify with CNIB because after making a lot of effort on my own, I realized that, oh, I will need agency. I will need to acquire more. I will need to be retrained. I understand the indicator of maybe language barriers because I see myself in a state of adaptation, integration, and assimilations. I try to pay more attention in listening in order for my communication to be more effective. Because when I came new, those are some of my baggages, some of my challenge. Coming to a new environment with new norms, social values, and different work ethics. So when I identified with CNIB, I was able to realize that the best option for me is to volunteer. After failing so much attempt of interview, and I tried to, where can I volunteer? I said, okay, I need to volunteer to identify with the community I belong to as a visually impaired person. So I start volunteering for CNIB for me to have more experience, work experience. So that really exposed me to get engaged in more community building, community activities, and different program, different employment training with a clause of my own limitation of computer training as a visually impaired person. So, however, after a couple of experience, adaptation, integration, and assimilation through volunteering, I was able to acquire the necessary skills in terms of effective communication, in terms of building more resume content. And this really gave me opportunity to have interview with Loblaws. And above that, it was a time opportunity for me as a result of COVID-19. Because at that time, my community engagement and volunteering was a little bit slow due to COVID-19. COVID-19 restricts everybody not to fully engage in community activities. So then, based on my experience, I was able to apply to Loblaws. And Loblaws, they are in need of staffs. So for me not to disclose, due to my past experience, not to disclose my identity, and they've taught me during my volunteering importance of disclosing identity. But for me, I realized that as an immigrant with disability, for me to disclose my identity as a visually impaired person, and also based on my accent, it will not really work for me based on my experience, my previous experience. So I stick not to disclose my identity. So I applied for the job as a customer service representative in Loblaws. Unfortunately, to my great surprise, I was called and the interview was done for me on phone. Irrespective of my accent, and they told me, oh, can you start the job immediately? I said, yes, why not? So my resume was so capturing to the extent that they moved me to the next stage. For the next stage, they believe, oh, they've done the necessary screening. I have good communication. I have very good communication skills. So the next stage was that, hi, Yomi, how soon can you start? I say, immediately. Okay, go to the, we've sent information to the manager at so branch close to your home. So go there, resume there. The name manager is so person. I went there. Getting there, the manager and the supervisor, they are surprised that, oh, visually impaired person, can this really guy do the job? But during the interview, I told them that, oh, I'm visually impaired. They say, can you still see? I say, yes. So when I got there, we level of my significant vision, the manager and the supervisor was contemplating that, oh, did they really know this guy is visually impaired? How can he really do this job? And when I got there, I met with the manager, and the manager does not even know what to say or what to where to place me when you realize I'm visually impaired. So before they come together to figure out things, I already walked to some of my colleagues based on the background knowledge I have about the department they want to enroll me into. So I met with those folks and asked them questions. That, how did you do this job? So they're looking at me, how I'm demonstrating myself with the colleagues and talking to them for the first time. They are observing me, and the lady, the guys there say, oh, this is what we do. This is what we do. This is, I say, okay, you know what? Can I just work with you for today? Why? Before my supervisor get back to me, let me just see how you guys are doing things. I fold my cane and I start working with the ladies and girls and following them. I say, please work slowly so we can do things together for today. So they didn't really tell me anything. They realized that I've tried to integrate myself, and I worked with them that day, and they realized that, wow, so he can even fold his cane and walk carefully around by himself. Oh, so to my greatest surprise, the following day, they said, okay, let's give him opportunity. Let's see how it will go within 3 months. So the manager called me and said, what support do you think we can give to you? I said, well, I just need time. I can do the job, but I'll do it in my own way. But I just need time to adapt to giving details information of what to do. So it's okay. And I start the job with them. So meanwhile, the second day, they look at how resilient I am, proactive I am. They say, okay, why can't we make things easier for this guy? Will you be cleaning this one for us for the meantime? Because we really need person in this role too, while we see how to integrate you more perfectly. So I was doing the job they asked me to do as a clerk, cleaning some bins for them. But while doing that, I realized that I was left in the cold. The work ethic, the integration was not forthcoming. I was so coming to work as if I didn't belong in this environment. If it's not for my own resilience, my determination, I was frustrated to leave the job. Nobody seems to get along. Everybody seems to be quiet. Other staff communicate with themselves. When it comes to me, it's so cold. And I was asking myself, is it that I don't understand English or what? So it took a while, it took a time before I can begin to see changes. Seeing me being accepted as a staff, seeing my colleagues communicating with me as a staff. It took me almost a year before I can see that communications. So it got to the point I just say, well, my business here is to do my job. In as much they didn't sack me. So I was saying that in the organization, it talks about diversity and inclusion, inclusiveness, accommodation for people with disability. But that was not the case for my experience. I was left in the cold. I was just doing the job, but due to my own attitudinal and my resilience really impressed the managers. And the manager looked at me and say, well, Yomi, you have to stop doing this. I want you to start doing face-off. I'll show you what to do. And after close to almost a year, the manager, not a year, sorry about, I think close to 6 months. So it's only me and the manager and the HR since to become a colleagues. Every other person, zero. When I come to work, I will have to be looking for my manager and the HR staff because they are the only one that seems to make me feel as if you belong here too. While other staff make me feel as if, no, you don't belong here. So those are the challenges when it comes to attitudinal in the workplace, accepting each other, irrespective of color or language. So it was a great challenge for me as a person with disability to navigate through employment because of all these key indicators, barriers as a refugee, as a newcomer with disability in terms of status before becoming a permanent resident, working with employment agency. Also, some organization does not really, everything is all about theoretical aspects. The practical is not there. So these are some of my experience when it comes to work employment.
Thank you so much, Adeleke. I must admit at our agency, although we have hired visually impaired individuals, we have turned away audioly impaired or hearing impaired individuals, right? It depends on the setup of the agency. We provide narrative counseling, clinical counseling to clients, right? And most of them don't know English. So for a very experienced clinician who cannot hear and only understands ASL in English, it would be a two-part translation, right? From the East Asian language into Chinese ASL and then Chinese ASL into English ASL into for that clinician to understand. So a lot will be lost in clinical work. But at the same time, we do have visually impaired counselors doing the same type of job because our job relies more on hearing than on vision now. So while we have tried, we're certainly not doing perfect work as articulated by Adeleke, right? Do any of our industry experts have anything in response to this to say, in terms of what our service gaps are, or are we able to accommodate, or what are the challenges with whatever is going on in the sector based on his experience? Michael or Sukena?
I can say something, and then Sukena, if you want to go, that's fine. So I just want to kind of mirror what Yomi said, just in terms of that attitudinal kind of barrier that he faced, because it's incredibly common. It's incredibly common, and it should not be. That's not how it should be. But most people, when they're coming into work and they're disclosing that they might have a disability to their employer or during the interview, often the perspective or the stance that the employer takes is, oh, okay, it's your job now to tell me everything about your condition and to tell me what I need to do for you, right? Where it's very challenging because for a person that has a disability, you might not know everything that you need on the job because it can be very situational. Sometimes you have to start the job and learn the job in order to realize the supports that you need. But the attitudinal barrier exists where employers think, oh no, they're going to tell me what they need, and then we're going to give it to them and then everything will be fine. But often it's an evolving situation, and even if the supports are given, more supports need to be put in place so that those individuals, those workers, can be felt welcomed in that community, in the workplace. So yeah, I just want to kind of mirror what you face there. It's very common and something that we need to address as a community. Thank you for sharing that experience.
Yes, thank you, Mike. And I can echo that too. As an employer, often they rely on the law, and the law says, you know, whatever your employee asked, you have to accommodate, right? So as from the employer's point of view, we won't know exactly what he or she needs, and we don't pretend to understand what all of the barriers they express, right, or experience, right? So we rely on their presentation of issues or their explanation of their barriers and accommodation required to be able to try to mitigate those risks. But like Michael said, not everybody is like Yomi, right? Not everybody knows everything about what's going on in the environment and what else they could ask for. So maybe Dada, you have more insight on that in terms of policy then, because of, you know, risks for employers and all of that.
So I work with primarily children and youth, and as youth are getting into the, you know, to the phase of, you know, graduating from high school and getting into the workforce, this is a real concern, especially for racialized families and newcomer families that we work with. And it starts even from the very beginning. It starts with not helping people identify their skills, and instead kind of putting them in a direction or forcing them in a direction where they're not set up for the workplace. We work with individuals with different skill sets, and really if somebody gives them a chance, they'll really come a long way. The problem is all these barriers, they reduce the chances and the opportunities they have in the workforce. And I really think attitudinal barriers is the biggest thing, but I'll even go a bit further and say it's not only attitudinal barriers, it's really in my personal opinion, it's really some oppressive, policies and situations that are put in place that really don't allow these young people to have an opportunity. I believe, Yomi, you had mentioned that they need workers, they need employees. One of the things we're seeing in our society right now is there's a shortage of employees, but yet there's a whole bunch of people who not only want to work, but who can work and who can give back in so many different ways. And I think, a conversation like this needs to happen in as many different spaces as possible, so that people really say, like, okay, if our policies are preventing people from working, then we need to change our policies.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Tada. Yes, that has all those opinions are all transferable across age groups, all age groups, right? Children, youth, and adults as well. It's the systemically oppressive policies, so that sometimes ties the hand of employers as well as employees to be able to partner with each other to contribute to economy. And on the note of children and youth, I think the mom has more to say about this, right? As a caregiver of a child with disability, Marie, would you be able to share with us, as an immigrant or a refugee that is a caregiver of a child with disability, any challenges or any identification of gaps that you've gleaned based on your experience, so we can debate it further? Marie?
Marie, vous avez votre son coupé, si vous essayez d'ouvrir le micro.
Ah oui?
On vous entend là, allez-y.
Ah oui, moi c'est Marie, immigrante. Je suis venue du Burundi et je suis dans la Nouvelle-Écosse je suis venue avec ma petite fille, Disabilities, Chouchou. Bon, écoutez, tout ce que je vais dire, c'est à propos de ma fille. Depuis que nous sommes là, la situation n'est pas, je dirais que depuis que nous sommes là jusqu'à présent, je dirais que la situation n'est pas du tout facile pour elle, puisqu'elle manque, si elle manque de traitement médical, c'est qu'elle manque de beaucoup de choses. Moi, je ne vois même pas pourquoi elle va même à l'école, puisqu'elle n'améliore rien, c'est-à-dire au niveau d'écriture, elle ne peut pas, au niveau de lire, elle ne peut pas. Donc, c'est vraiment dur parce que moi, j'ai fort insisté, j'ai toujours dit, j'ai toujours réclamé que s'ils ne sont pas capables de détecter, d'avoir au moins des machines pour faire ces examens, voir ce qui se passe à l'intérieur de son cerveau, mais s'ils ne sont pas capables ici, qu'on la transfère au moins quelque part, moi je trouve qu'il y a des problèmes au niveau de la médecine. Le problème est qu'on ne peut même pas transférer quelqu'un quand il y a des problèmes de santé. Il n'y a pas grand-chose ici, hein, qu'on se dise la vérité. C'est une région, je dirais, pauvre par rapport aux autres, hein, pauvre en tout, hein, puisque même la jeunesse, je vois souvent, ils quittent, ils préfèrent aller quelque part, peut-être pour éviter ces salaires trop bas. Bon, pour moi, je suis là. Je n'ai même pas cherché du boulot, puisque je voulais faire l'assistance de ma fille qui est malade. Mais je ne reçois rien. Mais je pense qu'à la place, si c'était quelqu'un d'autre qui l'a gardé, on la payerait, hein, mais moi, je ne reçois rien pratiquement. Donc, vous entendez qu'il y a beaucoup d'anomalies. Vraiment, pour les immigrants, il n'y a pas grand-chose. Il n'y a pas grand-chose. On manque de beaucoup de choses. On manque de telles formations, de ces petits métiers, de ces choses. Donc, franchement, c'est de la peine, hein, c'est de la peine. Hein. Bon, mais sinon, qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire? On est là, on assiste impuissamment. Même quand tu reçois un rendez-vous, on te dit dans 3 mois, ou même dans combien de temps, moi je ne sais pas. Ou même pour avoir un médecin, ça prendra quoi? Ça prendra même 1 ou 2 ans. Donc, je pense qu'il y a encore beaucoup de choses à faire pour les immigrants. Hein? Ouais. Bon, sinon, même maintenant, ma fille, elle est là. Ça va faire presque 1 mois. Elle est malade. Pas de traitement spécial, rien du tout. On ne sait pas où aller. Bon, ça fait un bout de temps. Elle se plaint de beaucoup de choses. Vous voyez le genre de maladie. Hein? Plus le temps passe, plus ça s'aggrave. Plus on n'a pas de traitement, plus ça donne autre complication. Hein? Maintenant, elle me dit qu'elle a mal au ventre. Ben, que je fasse quoi? Rien du tout. Même quand tu vas aux urgences, on te dit non, ça va finir, ça va finir. Mais c'est pas comme ça, c'est pas comme ça qu'on s'occupe des malades pareils. Mais pourtant, moi je sais qu'il y a de ces. Allô, vous m'entendez? Allô?
Oui, on vous entend là.
Ouais. C'était un petit problème. Bon, écoutez, Mais pourtant, je sais qu'il y a des régions où il y a des écoles spéciales pour des enfants pareils, il y a des éducatrices, éducateurs pour le genre de maladie. Bon, mais le problème, c'est ça. Le problème réside quelque part qu'on ne comprend pas. Pourquoi on ne donne pas le transfert? Pourquoi on ne... Je sais pas. C'est... Ça, je pense que ce n'est pas à mon niveau, hein. C'est quelque part, mais on ne sait pas où. Penser de déménager pour aller chercher peut-être une vie meilleure ailleurs, non plus, ça n'encourage pas. Ça n'encourage pas. On reste là, on attend. Mais jusqu'à quand, on ne sait pas. Par exemple, maintenant, on me dit qu'elle va graduer. Une qui ne sait pas écrire son nom, qui ne sait pas lire, elle va graduer en quoi? Pour aller faire quoi? Tout ça là, c'est révoltant. Hein? C'est vraiment révoltant. Non, je demandais à l'école de la maintenir comme ça. Là. Je n'aimerais pas même voir ces cérémonies de graduation. Parce que ça fait mal aux parents. Ce n'est pas ça que je veux. Moi, je veux le traitement d'abord. Pour question de graduation, ça viendra les autres années. Bon, pour moi, le grand problème, c'est ma fille. C'est ma fille. La pauvre, elle est là. Je ne sais pas ce qu'elle va devenir demain ou après-demain. Ouais. Moi, je pense que mon intervention, c'était juste ça. Hein. Bon. Mais sinon qu'est-ce qu'on peut demander encore? Qu'on visite de temps en temps ces régions un peu éloignées. Ces régions qui ne sont pas trop développées, il faut qu'on nous visite de temps en temps pour voir la vie des immigrants, ce qui se passe là où ils sont. Il faut offrir des occasions, de ces formations, hein, de ces choses, pour qu'on puisse plus tard faire quelque chose aussi spécial pour nous.
Thank you. Marie?
Je pense que j'ai fini.
Thank you, Marie. So it seems like it is a pattern, right, around caregivers or families with children with special needs or people with disabilities, having a lack of direction, a lack of hope, as in, you know, even when I graduate, what am I going to do? What does that help with, right? Or the caregiver, because of all that work that he or she has to put in, it's harder for them to get a job, right? Of course, my French is not that good. I'm just trying to like tease out important points there. I don't know whether you're going to go through an English translation of that aspect at all. No. And if that is the case, as in, you know, harder to find doctors, not enough support at the schools level, what can the community do with regards to these challenges, right? So this is more of a systemic question. Are we able to maybe start with Dr. Dada, if she's available?
Yes,
Thank you.
Yeah, like you know, what I think really what we need some more education, you know, not only for our families, but even for the staff at the schools. Like I find that, you know, at least from our organization's perspective, all we keep hearing is there's not enough resources, there's not enough staff, we don't have enough time. But I think that, those three things, there's not enough resources, there's not enough time, and there's not enough staff. I mean, I think all of us can say that, like, everyone feels, especially in today's day and age, like everyone feels very spread thin. But does that mean we're not going to actually do anything about some of these, major problems that we're seeing? And I think if we just resort to saying, well, there's not enough resources, then, instead, I think we need to shift the conversation and say what's happening is actually oppressive. What's happening is actually really harming some of these young people and their families. And I would even argue, and their communities, and I think that, we have to really shift the narrative and really identify these barriers as really being harmful, to families and to communities. And we have to do more than just identifying them. We really have to bring that forth and stop using the excuse there's not enough resources.
At our agency, we see that these resources for racialized kids are even less, right? Francophone kids, racialized kids, and those with precarious status, they basically have no one, right? And if they want to access any service, it wouldn't be with their OHIP card. It would be out of pocket with the credit card, right? And if they don't have the credit card, then they are left with no services. Now, our agency is very small. We have less than 40 people, and we're the only of such in Ontario. So we keep, like, we at the frontline grassroots level understand how no resources there is. But I'm talking in terms of the lens of users that are in need of services. There are no resources for me. There are no resources for them, right? But there are ample resources out there from the mental health budget, from the health budget, from the children and women's budget. And a lot of the times it's siloed ministries doing their own thing, creating all these barriers as in not talking to each other, sometimes creating overlaps, but then also that overlap is taking away what should have been used to fill the gaps. I think Michael, being in the field together with us, would have something to say, with regards to what he sees in terms of program lineups that is available versus not for this type of population. Michael?
Hi, yeah. And I really appreciate her perspective there as a parent, because I myself am a parent with a child with a disability, and I've gone through the education system and the struggle with the education system, and the fight and the struggle with the healthcare system, because as Anna mentioned it, they are siloed. They're completely siloed. You would think, oh, our government talks to each other, right? Because that's what we want them to do. But no, we know that is not the case. In fact, it's almost the opposite, where they go out of their way not to talk to each other. So when it comes to the healthcare system, for example, not enough information is being provided to newcomers coming in to teach them about the supports that are available, as well that in Canada, it is almost an unspoken culture that we have, where if you need something, you're supposed to ask for it, right? And especially when it comes to your child and your children, you're supposed to advocate for them within the healthcare industry. But again, it's not being discussed. It's not being talked about. So the supports that exist, again, if you don't know to talk about them, then you won't know them. As well, many doctors, even within the healthcare industry, are not taught, they are not informed about supporting people with disabilities, especially newcomers with disabilities and mental health conditions. So then, okay, I have a client and they have a condition. What do I do? Well, this is what I can do, and I'll tell them what I can do. And then the newcomer isn't told that they can get a second opinion. They can go and ask for more information from others and then get better referrals, better support within the system. But again, that information is often not shared, and it's experiences that are lived by these people, where they're then going years struggling with the services they have, which is inadequate, and then through years they learn about the supports that exist and they go, well, why wasn't I told this years ago? And then within the education system, sorry, I have a lot to say about this little topic here. Within the education system itself, again, that's a silo in itself, right? Because you'll go to the school and you'll say, these are the supports that my child needs. And then the school will go, okay, well, we have this budget for our school, so we have to fit it in. And you go, okay, but I have this assessment for my child that says that this is the funding that they get. They get this funding, don't they? And then no, you learn no, that the school decides where the funding goes. So often, because schools are overcrowded right now, the funding doesn't go towards your child. It doesn't go towards the support that they need. And instead of it becoming an education center like schools are supposed to be, it becomes more of a child care, child watching system, right? Where instead they go, they are supported there for the day, and then they come home. And you go, okay, what has my child actually learned? And when it comes to the lack of resources out there, there is a huge apathy towards change. And I think every one of us, all of us participating, could agree to increase our taxes. Not a dramatic amount. It doesn't need to be a dramatic amount. It could be 1% perhaps. But we would all agree to an increase in taxes if it meant to an increase in supports. Stop telling us that there isn't teachers. Stop telling us there isn't doctors, right? Okay, if there isn't, tell us what needs to happen so that we as a community can fix it. Sorry, those are my thoughts.
Those are very juicy thoughts. Not to mention there are schools that are specializing in things, right? Schools specializing in integrated groups, schools specializing in pulling people out, schools specializing in special needs as in gifted programs, and therefore your kid does not fall under our purview, and therefore please go next door, right? We have that in York Region and Toronto as well in Ontario. I think we have answered question number 2 as well. And I might just quickly go over number 3, as in, as before we close and move on to the toolkit section, what do you think are some recommendations, right? Based on the obstacles that we have identified just now, what do you think are some achievements in inclusivity and equity in settlement services that we can actually, are worth our celebration to date? Anybody out of the 4 guests, maybe? Things that are working well? Don't be shy. Just unmute your mic.
If I can, I think one of the achievements, and is that we're identifying there's a problem. And I think this is such a critical step. And when you think about it, you just wonder, like, how is it that we went so many years without really being so vocal and identifying that there's a problem? But I think identifying the problem, and not just one of us, but all of us here agreeing and really acknowledging that there is a problem. There is a problem with when people are coming to this country and they're not getting services, they're not getting supports. In fact, they're getting less services that they need and less supports that they need. And so while I don't mean to sound pessimistic, but while it sounds like such a a step that is needed, I'm very proud of the fact that we are identifying that there's a problem that we need to work on.
In terms of positive things that we could look at, again, it can be challenging to look in the positive, right? But I think some things that we can look at in terms of positive are really just trying to shift the way that we think about it, right? Because there are negative things that really open up opportunities. And a really negative thing we all went through was the pandemic, right? But it opened up tremendous possibilities, because now a lot more people are willing to talk about mental health and the stress that it caused, right? So mental health is becoming a lot more common for people to talk about, which is good. Anytime we're talking more about a disability or mental health is a good thing. We need to make it more common. We need to change the attitude of the general public where they realize, oh, okay, you know, I've got an appointment with the dentist. Okay, no problem. Everybody goes to see the dentist. But if you say that, oh, I've got an appointment with a therapist or a psychologist, all of a sudden it changes how you might be wishing to convey that message. Should you tell that person? Because it isn't normalized, and we need to realize that just how common it is, right? You know, people with disabilities make up a huge percentage of our population. Over 22% of Canadians have a permanent condition or disability. It's incredibly common. We're the largest minority that exists when we think about it like that. So there's a lot of challenging situations that we can look at right now, and we can take advantage of them. We can say, look, these are some of the challenges that have happened, and this is what we've done. And now that we've identified some of these issues, perhaps we can use some of these challenging situations as examples of ways to move forward.
Agree. Marie, did you have a hand up just now? Were you trying to speak?
Allô?
Yes.
Vous demandez si j'ai quoi?
Est-ce que vous avez une question ou quelque chose à ajouter, Marie? Désolée, I'm jumping in, Anna.
Oui, bon, à ajouter, c'est juste pour, franchement, on veut bien le service de l'immigration, le service qu'il nous donne, mais il faut quand même un suivi, il faut un suivi. Des fois, ils savent très bien qu'il y a de ces gens qui sont venus dans un état malade. Alors, que ces gens-là trouvent des médecins pour eux, pour avoir un suivi, c'est tout ce qu'on demande. Oui, ils font du bon boulot, mais une fois arrivés au Canada, il ne faut pas nous laisser tomber. Il faut une assistance quand même. Moi c'est ce que je pense. Hein? Et les malades sont différents, puisqu'il y a des handicapés. Ce sont ces handicapés qui ont besoin d'assistance, ces disabilities qui ont besoin d'assistance. Des fois, même, c'est pas trop grave. Peut-être qu'ils ont encore la chance d'être guéris. Mais une fois, ils ne sont pas traités, donc ils périssent comme ça, hein, sans avoir une vie saine. Donc, pardon, franchement, on demande beaucoup d'assistance. Beaucoup d'assistance, c'est tout. Le suivi.
Yes, agreed. So something minor, if you don't treat it, it becomes more expensive to treat and serious to treat and harder to treat. And that's where what we don't want to see, right? Picking up as a mental health agency, picking up clients from the hospital, from the police, or from the courts, right? We don't want to do that, whether they have exerted harm on themselves or others, or have had a nervous breakdown. Lastly, Yomi, do you have anything more to add before we move to Q&A?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're talking about recommendation here, is that, if I'm right?
Yeah, or whatever is working well.
What is working well? Okay.
Yeah.
For me, to be honest with you, sometimes, openness brings trust, and sometimes it's very reverse is the case. It's expose you to danger. As an immigrant with disabilities, I try to be open as much as I can and also to be objective. I realize that the policy is there, very robust policy, very inclusive policy that the government has made at all levels for Canadian citizens. But the problem is implementation process. Those who have occupied that position to implement all this policy? How biased are they when it comes to oppressive? What is their perspective about immigrants? Because the policy are there, and government is even make everything possible when it comes to accessibility, going digital for people to easily access services. But still health, we need human to process these procedures. For those human, how do they have that political will to be indifferent when it comes to diversity and inclusions? For me, I realize that when it comes to people with disabilities, a lot of barrier has been broken. I've seen a couple of agencies like Center for Independent Living Toronto, CNIB, different agencies, different organizations, which I cannot even remember all, working tirelessly to push back barriers. But apart from these people who are knowledgeable in this field, who understand the spectrums of disabilities, I realized that where I worked before, if I'm mentioning names of organizations, I'm sorry about that. I don't know if that will put me into trouble. I realized that it's all about individual knowledge, what this individual will be able to bring to work, their attitude. I work in an organization, I see a lot of oppressive attitude, but why some others are saying no to it? So this is individual. As Michael said, that we need an information that will make immigrants to take informed decisions. How easy do we have access to this information in order to make informed decisions as an immigrant with disabilities to be more effective within the communities? And the other thing is that those who have been objective, they are few because of those who have been oppressive. For example, I know recently a meeting happened in an organization I work that some people are saying, no, this is the way forward, and some people are still holding back because you are not well informed. They take decisions where you are not around. A critical example that not that these people didn't know what to do, but how the political will to do it towards race. Nobody is born to be a racist. Racist society teaches racist. It's a systemic issues. Then how can we retrain these people who are teaching racist? OCASI has come up with a wonderful training modules, which I believe it should be privatized to every individual, every organization, sectors, HR department, head of department, for them to integrate this training into their curriculum to train their staffs, even those who are in charge of managerial positions. Because as a manager, you supervise staffs. A manager that is unbiased, then you will not tolerate any oppressive in your department, in what you manage. When you identify such, you will deal with it. But when the manager is also part of oppressive, what do you think would happen to those being oppressed? And for you to speak out, they encourage us to speak out. But if you speak out, how effective it is. You speak out, you be open, it may lead to a dilemma of you being denial. If you keep quiet, it becomes mercy and compassion. Believing it's not your right, we just want to give it to you. But the system is there, the policy is there. But how can we change this inherent systemic issues of, I don't want to call it, maybe I should call it racist. Towards people of colors.
Thank you, Yomi. That has truly given us a lot to think about. That's very heavy as the last comment. And it seems like there is the level of sensitivity and there is the level of awareness, but there's not enough ammunition to execute the will, right? You can't just talk about it or think about it and dance around it and be scared and want just to be politically correct. But instead of checking the boxes, right, and being superficially politically correct, how do we change and transform the system in such a way that it is not only talking about people with disabilities versus disabled people, but, you know, from a funding, from a gender, from an ableism perspective, you know, ground up, transform the system altogether from social support to health to legal to make it truly equitable versus superficially equitable. Wow. Okay, it was very heavy. Thank you so much, Yomi. Do we have any questions from the floor for any of our 4 guests for now? There is a raised hand. Eve? Eve, do you want to unmute yourself to ask the question? Or is Eve able to ask the question?
Thank you, Anna V. I'm from Calgary with the Gateway Association. We work with children, youth facing disability. One of the things as an immigrant myself that I've faced in this society is the notion that, you know, the Black people like to milk the system. And I've seen this in situations where you see a parent with a child who is, has disability, and they're trying to access services, and you know, somebody who do not understand what their needs are would come in and say, I know these people, they're just trying to milk the system. What can we do as service providers to change this mindset? Because to me, I feel like it's really affecting the change that we're trying to fight for. And it's something that has been ingrained in the minds of this society for a long time.
Anna, can I make a comment, or is it? Okay, so, you know, to respond, I think we need to call out those types of statements for what they are. They're racist, they're discriminatory. And I think that, you know, like I often hear that with the organization that I work with, I often hear similar comments, similar statements, and they're xenophobic and they're ableist and they're racist. And I think what we need to do is really, you know, I don't think people are going to stop making those types of comments, but I think what we need to do is talk about how inappropriate they are. Comments like milking the system are very xenophobic and very racist, and such comments, you know, they're designed to isolate and to ostracize and marginalize. And I think, you know, when we hear somebody making a comment like that, we have to talk about how inappropriate it is and not just let it slide. You know, I don't think our jobs are to convince people that that's not the case. I think instead we have to take a different approach and say that's completely inappropriate. Because I think when we try to convince people that that's not the case, then we're just sort of, you know, getting into the game of why we deserve to be here. And that's not a question.
Right, coming from also a racialized community, I still remember a couple of years ago when we were going through municipal elections, the last one, not this latest one, though we had a town hall meet and greet luncheon with all the candidates and their constituents. Most of them are clients too. You can imagine our clients, mental health, newcomer, racialized, poverty, vulnerabilities, blah. that candidate at that time who ultimately won the election, but got kicked out for bookkeeping errors, quote unquote. He was at the table. There were single moms, unemployed, and seniors who were bringing up suggestions of can there be temporarily breaks in affairs for unemployed single moms and seniors? And the comment of that candidate at that point was, you Chinese are known to fraud and scam the system. Why would I give you that benefit? So yeah, it's not anything different from saying, blacks are known to milk the system, right? Then we can say the same things about white. Obviously, there are the white crimes and the black crimes and the yellow crimes, whatever they call it, overgeneralized in an overgeneralized way and very, very stereotypical way. But also I would like to not to bury the fact that there's also in-group fights. Right. So our government is known to be very politically correct with speech, but not with actions. Right. So like, Dr. Dada says, if they don't put it in actions, it's all just about, trying to convince them that we have the right to be here. But, when stuff happens and they're still not acting upon it, that goes beyond the line of not understanding racism or discrimination or ableism, right? In-group fighting could be people from the same race or from the same country with different political views duking out amongst themselves, right? Could be vandalism, could be one side infringing on the other side's freedom of speech because they're fighting, or conspiracy theory, or discriminatory remarks and all of that too. And when it comes to this, it's even harder for our government to do anything about it. And that particular case happened a few times over the last 2 years in my community, only because of the socio-political oppression going on in parts of Asia, where it also involves the totalitarian government of China, right? Obviously, for the government to speak up against another country, it's something big. And against a country of race, it's also something big. Being humanitarian and being all-inclusive and being democratic and just are the values of Canada, right? We should not be shy to stand up for those, and we should not be shy to call out on those who are committing violations of such core values, be it people of color, people in power, or not. I think we have spent enough time on this section. If there are no more questions, Eve, is that an old hand? Thank you. Then we probably need to move on to the next part of the journey, which is a lot more juicy than listening to Anna speak. And that has something to do with the inclusivity toolkit by our dear CM. And let me introduce her. CM Hamuda is the bilingual coordinator at the Accessibility Initiative at OCASI. She's a trained facilitator, an inclusive educator and professional with over 15 years of experience in facilitating training and developing curriculum. CM holds a master's degree in law from University of Tunis and project management diploma from Collège Boréal. As an experienced community researcher who works primarily on equity and diversity issues using an anti-racist, anti-oppressive framework, she strives to empower immigrants and refugees with disabilities, as well as strengthen the capacity of the settlement sector to better serve this vulnerable population. Her work was focused on issues of access and equity and the creation of inclusive communities for racialized people, including Francophone and minority language settings. Over to you, Siam.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for this great introduction. I will be speaking in French just to balance the languages here. So for those who are not bilingual or Francophone, please go to the website and sign and choose French as language. Today, we are thrilled to present the toolkit that we were working on it more than 1 year now. And if I will be sharing my screen in a bit here.
Tooltip stop video, Alt+V.
Hello. Yeah, so who else is not talking, please unmute yourself. Donc, merci d'être ici aujourd'hui. C'est notre plaisir de présenter la boîte à outils nationale pour OCASI. C'est une boîte qu'on a passé plus d'une année à développer, nous et les consultants, et on est très fiers aujourd'hui de la présenter. C'est une boîte nationale qui est dans les deux langues, en français et en anglais. Là, juste, j'ai un tout petit problème, je ne sais pas comment partager mon écran avec vous. Donc, si vous me donnez juste un instant, désolé pour ça, il y a toujours les problèmes techniques. Même après 2 ans et demi de pandémie, d'accord. Donc, apparemment, il y a un problème, je ne peux pas le partager, désolé pour ça. Mais si Taeyang ou Tekla, vous pouvez bien mettre les liens vers, vers la trousse, la boîte à outils. Et puis, je vais copier et la mettre ici. Pour vous, pour que vous puissiez aller voir. Et voilà. Et donc, c'est comme j'ai dit, cette trousse est la deuxième version de ce qu'on a déjà fait auparavant au OCASI. Ce n'est pas la première boîte à outils qu'on fasse. On a déjà fait ça quand on était un projet provincial. À ce moment-là, notre audience était que l'Ontario. Et donc, on a créé une trousse pour l'accessibilité. Et cette trousse-là, elle était pour le secteur de l'établissement, afin que les gens qui travaillent avec les personnes immigrantes et réfugiées aient une plus grande connaissance sur ce que ça veut dire un handicap, ce que c'est l'accessibilité, quelles sont leurs obligations et quelles sont les difficultés qu'une personne en situation de handicap, qu'elle soit ou encore une personne sourde, qu'elle soit immigrante ou réfugiée ou nouvellement arrivante au Canada, puisse, quels sont les droits auxquels elles doivent avoir, et en tant que prestataire de services, quelles sont les obligations de par la loi, mais aussi si on fait un pas de plus comme Yumi venait de dire, même pour les politiques, on peut toujours être proactif et donner une prestation de services plus inclusive et plus équitable. Et donc, pour ce toolkit, cette boîte pour l'accessibilité, comme j'ai dit, elle est pour cette nouvelle version, elle est pour une audience nationale. C'est-à-dire que c'est pour, comme le projet il est devenu national depuis 2020, donc le contenu de ce qu'on avait, on l'a adapté à la population canadienne, si vous voulez, de côte à côte à côte. Et ce n'est pas une trousse qui est seulement pour le secteur de l'établissement, non, mais c'est aussi pour le secteur de l'handicap et la communauté, mais aussi les personnes en situation de handicap. Là, on a essayé de combler un fossé parce que généralement, les gens qui travaillent dans le secteur de l'établissement, ils savent très bien ce que c'est les besoins d'une personne immigrante ou réfugiée quand elle vient s'établir ici. Mais ils n'ont pas beaucoup de connaissances en ce qui concerne le handicap ou encore comment le traiter ou comment référer les gens. Et vice-versa, dans le secteur de l'handicap, ils savent très bien ce que c'est un handicap, comment référer les gens, comment traiter, quoique je n'aime pas beaucoup ce mot-là, mais par contre, ils n'ont pas une grande connaissance sur les défis qu'une personne nouvellement arrivante avec un handicap ou encore qui a une personne dans sa famille qui a un handicap sont en train de subir. Et donc, c'était une chose primordial pour nous de partager ces connaissances-là. Cette boîte à outils, elle a été faite après une consultation nationale. Et cette consultation, elle a inclus les gens qui travaillent dans le secteur de l'établissement,
les gens qui travaillent dans le secteur de l'handicap, mais aussi les personnes immigrantes et réfugiées en situation de handicap. Et là, comme on dit en anglais, nothing for us without us, c'est ce qu'on a essayé de faire. Donc, il faut que les personnes elles-mêmes, avec l'expérience vécue de handicap, aient leur propre voix, parce qu'on ne sait pas mieux quels sont leurs besoins. Et puis, également, on a utilisé tous les feedbacks, tous les commentaires qu'on a reçus au fil des ans de nos participants qui ont participé dans nos formations depuis 2011. Parce que l'initiative pour l'accessibilité, elle existe depuis 2011. Et donc, comme je dis, jusqu'à 2019, elle a été provinciale. Et après, depuis, on est au niveau national. Et donc, on a formé plus que 4000 personnes. Et on a essayé de filtrer quels sont les besoins émergents. Et on a essayé de répondre à ces besoins-là dans ce toolkit ou trousse pour l'accessibilité ou boîte à outils. Et on a essayé de la faire comme un outil qui soit pratique, parce qu'on est conscient que les gens, ils peuvent avoir du temps pour prendre un cours de cette semaine ou autre, comme les cours que nous, on propose, ou encore d'assister à des tables rondes comme celle-ci, ou encore des webinaires. Mais des fois, entre deux clients, deux rapports, ils ont besoin d'une information qui soit à portée de main. Et c'est ce qu'on a essayé de faire par cette nouvelle trousse pour l'accessibilité. On a essayé que les renseignements soient précis, bien agencés et puis à portée de main. Donc, vous cliquez sur ce que vous cherchez, vous allez trouver, et on espère, la solution ou là encore la réponse aux questions. Donc, il y a ça. Et puis, ça a été fait avec donc le Needs Assessment, ça a été fait avec les anglophones et les francophones. Donc, quand je dis que cette trousse pour l'accessibilité, elle est en français et en anglais, c'est pour le français, et ça, c'est quelque chose dont je suis très fière en tant que personnel et coordinatrice à OCASI, c'est qu'on ne fait pas la traduction de l'anglais en français pour répondre aux besoins de la communauté francophone. Non, donc, en fait, il y a eu toute une consultation avec les francophones en situation de handicap ou les prestataires de services qui travaillent avec les personnes immigrantes et réfugiées en situation de handicap, qui sont francophones et en contexte minoritaire linguistique. Là, pourquoi j'insiste sur ça? Parce que au Québec ou encore au Nouveau-Brunswick, donc le Québec, c'est une province qui est francophone, le Nouveau-Brunswick, c'est bilingue. On peut toujours trouver des ressources ou des organisations qui travaillent avec les personnes immigrantes et réfugiées, qu'elles soient en situation de handicap ou pas, mais ce n'est pas vraiment le cas ou à une moindre échelle dans les autres provinces et territoires. Et donc, il y a un nouveau set de défis qui est là présent. Et on a essayé justement de voir quels sont les challenges supplémentaires, les défis et les problèmes supplémentaires, mais aussi de souligner donc, les bonnes pratiques que les organisations, encore les alliés pour l'accessibilité ou les communautés qui font du plaidoyer pour les personnes immigrantes ou réfugiées ont trouvé. Donc, c'est aussi un partage de bonnes pratiques. Donc, quand vous allez feuilleter ou aller à travers la trousse pour l'accessibilité, quel que soit en français ou en anglais, vous allez toujours trouver qu'est-ce que le handicap? Parce que c'est primordial de comprendre ce qu'est le handicap, qu'il soit visible ou non visible, de travailler sur nos propres préjugés et biais implicites ou explicites, parce qu'on en a. Et c'est très important, surtout pour les prestataires de services, de comprendre leurs propres biais pour qu'ils ne soient pas un facteur d'oppression pour la personne en situation de handicap qui vient à leurs agences et qui a besoin de services ou d'aide. Donc, il faut qu'on ait ce regard critique-là. Et comme ça, on va travailler avec le framework, donc le cadre de travail anti-racisme et anti-oppression, et le cadre de travail de la justice pour les personnes en situation de handicap. Après, il y a toute une section sur l'accessibilité. Qu'est-ce qu'on veut dire par accessibilité? C'est quoi la différence entre accessibilité et accès? Quand est-ce qu'on aura une accessibilité équitable et inclusive? Parce que, attention, on peut avoir ça, mais comment on l'applique, on peut rendre ça très oppressif. On peut exclure des gens. Il y a aussi une partie qui insiste beaucoup sur l'intersectionnalité, parce que la personne immigrante ou réfugiée, c'est une personne qui vient peut-être qui a un handicap ou qui est sourde, mais ça peut être aussi une personne qui est racisée, une personne qui s'identifie comme faisant partie de la communauté LGBTQ, ou encore une personne qui est abusée chez soi. Donc, il y a différentes identités qui s'intersectent. Et c'est très important pour les prestataires de services de voir la personne dans sa globalité. Et non pas, il vient chez moi, il vient chez mon organisation pour chercher ce service-là sur le handicap, donc je me focalise sur ça et je ne vois pas les autres choses. Ou encore, s'il vient pour, par exemple, les maisons d'hébergement pour les personnes qui sont sujets à la violence basée sur le genre ou autre, donc je ne vois que ça. Non, on essaie de vraiment inciter les gens à voir la personne dans sa globalité, et même si notre agence, elle ne traite pas de ce genre de service ou elle ne l'a pas, il y a toujours moyen de faire si vous voulez, la référer ou encore donner l'information. Dans un autre sens aussi, on assiste beaucoup dans la trousse qu'on est des prestataires de services, on n'est pas des experts dans le handicap ou dans la santé mentale ou autre. Donc, notre travail, c'est d'écouter la personne, de savoir c'est quoi ses besoins, d'essayer de voir si on peut répondre à ces besoins-là, sinon, vers quelle autre organisation on peut la référer. Et ça, c'est très important. Après, vous allez trouver toute une section sur les lois. Et là, c'est très important parce que d'un côté, c'est une éducation, comme ça on connaît quelles sont nos obligations, mais aussi nos droits. Et la loi, vous allez trouver la loi nationale, donc comme la Convention des Nations Unies, ou encore les lois nationales, fédérales, comme la loi sur l'accessibilité qui a été promulguée en 2019 et qui s'applique au niveau fédéral. Et on a essayé de vous donner un tableau dans lequel vous allez trouver quand est-ce que la loi fédérale s'applique, et aussi après, quels sont les autres domaines ou territoires où on peut appliquer les lois nationales ou territoriales. Donc, il y a ça. Et après, il y a aussi ce qu'on appelle déconstruire le langage. Et c'est une section dont je suis très fière, et c'est très bien parce que vous allez voir, dans notre langage quotidien, des fois, on est oppressif sans qu'on le sache. Et puis, des fois, on utilise des mots qui, peut-être dans notre culture, elle est appropriée, elle ne l'est pas pour les autres. Donc, aussi comprendre et apprendre et désapprendre ce qu'on sait, c'est un autre pas pour avoir et fournir un service qui est inclusif. Et puis, après ça, vous allez trouver les bonnes pratiques. Là, on a essayé de vous donner comme une synthèse de ce qu'on a vu au fil des ans, mais aussi dans les formations qu'on a faites, mais aussi de ce qu'on a entendu de la communauté ou des experts avec qui on a fait la phase de needs assessment. Et donc, comme ça, il y a tout un set de que faire et que ne pas faire, ce qu'il faut dire et ce qu'il faut éviter de dire. Et en cas de doute, comment on peut référer la personne ou encore gérer la situation. Et donc, ce toolkit, on est très fiers de le lancer dans cette semaine-là pour commémorer la Journée internationale des personnes en situation de handicap. C'était un samedi, le 3, donc on ne savait pas si on aurait beaucoup de gens qui seraient là, présents dans la table ronde. Donc, on a préféré la faire aujourd'hui, mais on a voulu que le lancement soit symbolique. pour honorer les personnes en situation de handicap et les gens qui sont en train de les servir. Là, bon, bonjour, apparemment ça s'est coupé, désolé. Et donc, j'étais en train de dire que c'est ça les aléas de l'Internet et des choses sur lesquelles on n'a pas de contrôle. Et donc, j'étais en train de dire que je voulais, en mon nom, et quand je dis je, c'est nous, OCASI, je représente OCASI, vraiment remercier les personnes en situation de handicap et les personnes sourdes qui ont eu le courage de partager avec nous leur parcours, leurs expériences, leurs traumas, mais aussi les bonnes pratiques qu'elles ont eues au fil des ans. Merci. Et si vous avez des questions, allez-y. Allez-y, Lee. Anne, on ne peut pas vous entendre si vous avez une question. Unmute yourself.
Leanne, there's a hand up. Do you want to unmute yourself, Leanne?
We can hear you now, Leanne.
I don't know what happened. I don't have a question.
Oh, no worries. So because you had your hand
Oh, I'm
raised.
sorry. I'm actually visually impaired myself. I didn't see that had happened.
No worries. Thank you. Is there any question from the audience? Allez-y, Marion. Go ahead.
Oh, pour moi, bon, tout ce que je peux dire, je dirais merci beaucoup. Merci d'avoir pensé à nous. Nous attendons toujours le meilleur service de votre part. Hein. C'est tout ce que je peux dire. Je vous remercie beaucoup.
Merci à vous d'avoir partagé votre expérience avec nous. Et on essaie de faire du mieux qu'on peut, comme on dit. Là, j'ai Eve Akini, qui a sa main. Allez-y. Quiconque a une question, vous pouvez, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, please go ahead, Eve.
Oh, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. I personally love what OCASI is doing, and having come, to one of your courses, that led to this roundtable. I kind of feel like what you're offering is so valuable, and how can we help? Because I also do diversity and inclusion training. How can we help or even collaborate so that your information, the wonderful information you have, can be shared with employers and other service providers who are not aware of your organization?
Great question, thank you. For us, it is very good to take our courses and workshops, but it is very important for us that you, each time, you take the time to respond and to complete the evaluation forms and surveys, because that way we will see where we perform and where we need to perform better, right? And this is how actually we can adapt our services, materials, expertise, and people with whom we work towards creating materials and resources that really or better respond to your training. And yeah, all our materials, all our resources are free. They are available on our website, so you can share them. This is also how you can help being an ally, right, by sharing these resources and starting also discussion within your organization, within your community, within your families. As I said, it's very important to learn and unlearn, right, and have this critical thinking about how we consider disability, how we see immigrants with or refugees with disabilities or deaf person, how we see racialized immigrants or refugees with disabilities. So starting these discussions, sharing the resources, this is the way, and providing us with feedback, this is how you can help us. I don't know if any other of the panelists can add to this.
Yeah, so yeah, you know what, actually one of the things we do this kind of roundtable is to get your suggestion, your recommendation. And of course, we are focused on providing training to service providers because you know, we want to raise awareness within the sector that there are newcomers with disabilities that require your support. But at the same time, you know, listening to Yomi, that there are challenges with the employers. So how do we raise awareness with the employers? And you know, I wasn't thinking about it, but it just came to me, you know, inviting them to this kind of roundtable, engaging them in discussion, most probably, you know, might support, you know, the work we do. But at the same time, if there is a need, if they are willing, and I don't know, organizations usually work with the employers and they have a connection with employers. And I don't know how, you know, settlement workers do work with employers. If there are opportunities to provide training, you just invite us and we can come, or you know, through Zoom, we can provide orientation to employers. But the biggest thing, you know, that I see is attitudinal problems, not with employers only, but with fellow, you know, workers. You know, what I hear, you know, today and that we are aware of is we have some attitudinal problems that need to be carved out, and that is through education and you know, raising awareness. So in every community, in every situation, raising awareness would be you know, the primary contribution of anyone, whether you consider yourself allies to this project or just as an individual.
Thank you, Ita.
Siam, il y a une question dans le chat.
Allez-y.
C'est dit, ma question c'était sur l'aspect juridique et pratique de cette trousse pour savoir si c'est adapté pour le Québec ou plus spécifiquement pour l'Ontario.
Est-ce que vous faites référence à la question de Kelly?
Ça dit Anonymous Attendee sur le chat, mais je ne suis pas 100% certaine de qui ça vient.
So, Siham, are you answering this? Siham, are you frozen again? I think she is. Yeah, so in terms of, I think that toolkit is a national toolkit. So it is not for Ontario only. In fact, this project is a bilingual project and it is a national. So we did, as Siham explained, we did consultation across Canada, including Quebec. So it has taken into consideration the need of Quebec. So it is for everyone in Canada.
I pasted the link to the toolkits into the chat for the French and the toolkit and the English toolkit, both.
Radia has her hand up.
Go ahead. Just unmute yourself and ask your question. Vous pouvez juste ouvrir votre micro et poser votre question.
Ok, merci. En fait, je disais que juste pour la question sur les lois, sur le volet légal, ce qui est marqué dans le kit, c'est que c'est pour les personnes sur la loi relative aux personnes qui vivent en Ontario. Donc, je ne sais pas à quel point ça va être adapté au Québec.
Alors, allez-y. Vous avez fini?
Oui.
Ah, désolé. Donc, en fait, on a essayé de scanner toutes les lois qui s'appliquent sur l'accessibilité au niveau du pays, au niveau du Canada. Donc, vous allez voir qu'il y a une partie, et en fait, désolé si je vais entrer dans quelques détails de juriste, mais il y a une pyramide de lois. Donc, la première, c'est la loi internationale, parce que le Canada a signé cette convention-là et qui dit que vous n'avez pas le droit de discriminer une personne en situation de handicap à cause de son handicap. Donc, il y a ça. Après, vous allez trouver les lois qui s'appliquent au niveau national. Et donc là, il y a comme la Charte des droits de l'homme. Et puis, il y a aussi, comme je viens de dire, la nouvelle, parce que c'est toujours nouvelle, même au niveau de l'application de la loi canadienne sur l'accessibilité de 2019. Et puis après, vous allez trouver les lois qui s'appliquent, qui sont provinciales ou territoriales. Parce que, par exemple, en Ontario, on a la loi sur les personnes, sur l'accessibilité des personnes en situation de handicap. Il y a aussi en Colombie-Britannique, ils viennent aussi d'avoir leur nouvelle loi sur l'accessibilité. Il y a aussi la loi au niveau de la province du Manitoba. Et donc, on a essayé de scanner toutes les lois qui s'appliquent, quel que soit au niveau territorial, provincial ou encore fédéral. Après, mais aussi la loi des personnes handicapées du Québec. Après, ça va dépendre où vous êtes et quelle loi elle va s'appliquer dans ce territoire-là. Donc, c'est une application territoriale. Donc, ça dépend où vous en êtes. Et même pour la loi fédérale pour l'accessibilité, elle s'applique à quelques services comme les banques, comme le transport, mais pas à tous les niveaux. Et ce qu'on a essayé de faire, en fait, vous allez surtout le trouver dans la version française du kit. Il y a un tableau dans lequel vous allez trouver qu'est-ce qui s'applique et où. Je ne sais pas si j'ai bien répondu à votre question.
Oui, merci.
Je vous en prie. D'autres questions? Je crois qu'on s'est rendu à la fin de l'événement. I think we are now at the closing remarks. Eta, if we don't have any other questions, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I really enjoyed this event. And thank you for the team, Siham and Tekla, and the allies in accessibility and the NAC, that is a National Advisory Committee. So this was a wonderful event. I think we heard a lot of things, and actually what Sukina said about, we are good sometimes at identifying things. So what is next? And I think, I think Michael said that having dialogue really helps, because sometimes to navigate the system is very difficult. You don't know if there are services available, even if you know. If you are a newcomer, somebody has to tell you, and even somebody need to interpret what that means. So, having a dialogue is a good thing, and most probably we will have another event soon. But we have the community of practice. The community of practice is a platform for settlement practitioners. It is a national project, and we have a group there. The accessibility has a group, and I think we would try to put some of these discussions in that group. But it will be good if people contribute to the discussion, maybe ask their question, and the technology has allowed us to communicate in different ways, and one is in this setting, the other is the community of practice, and I think we should continue to discuss and to educate ourselves, to listen to what other people are saying, to share information. That will be a good idea. But for today, this is really wonderful. Thank you very much for taking the time to participate in this event. And thank you for, Yomi and Marceline to share your personal experience, and also the service provider, Sukina and Michael, and Dr. Wong. Thank you very much for everything. And thank you until we meet another time online.
So before we leave, let's just take a few minutes to do this poll so that we can improve in our next event. So I'm just going to launch it and then take a few minutes to answer the questions.